Hey y'all, so this right here is my hand-loaded carry ammunition for my Colt Delta Elite 10mm. And apparently there's a lot of debate on whether you should or should not carry hand-loaded ammunition. So today I'm going to kind of give my thoughts on that. Okay, to start out I'm going to give a Paul Harrell style disclaimer. First of all, I'm not a lawyer. This is based on my opinion, my experience, and my knowledge. So, just like everybody else on YouTube, I'm not giving you legal advice. This is just my thoughts. Secondly, I apologize for the noise in the background. I am in my apartment. It's a 90-degree day. The AC without that on the third floor would be miserable. And thirdly, I encourage anybody, whether you agree or disagree with me, feel free to tell me why you don't down below. This should be an interesting topic. I know it's quite a hot topic. And I am curious to hear everybody else's thoughts because I'm going to give mine in this video. So let's get into it. Alright, so what I have here is I have a list of the dangers of hand-loaded carry ammunition. And what I've done is I've done some research online and I've looked in some forums and I've checked out some different things and I've seen a variety of different reasons people say you shouldn't carry hand-loaded ammunition. I obviously am in the camp that does carry hand-loaded ammunition. So I figured since I'm in that camp, I wanted to try and dispel some of the things people say are reasons you should not do it. So let's get into it. So number one is it shows intent to cause harm and premeditation. And I've actually seen that a bunch of times. And whenever I've seen that, I've always just kind of wondered where they're coming from. Obviously as the good guy with a gun, you're basically only ever going to use your firearm in anger for one thing, and that should be self-defense. And when you say premeditation, intent to cause harm, if you're shooting in self-defense, you are in fact the victim. So I'm not quite sure how you premeditated being the victim, but let's tear into that. So let me get this straight for anybody that thinks that. I've gone out and purchased a firearm. I've gone out, I've done that legally. I've gone out and legally acquired the means to carry that firearm in my given state, right? Whatever permit to carry or whatever I've had done, or, every state's different. I've gone out and purchased a holster legally. I can go out to anywhere. I can purchase a concealment holster just about anywhere. And I've gone out and I've hopefully practiced with that firearm. And I've gone out and I've done all these things legally, right? I'm carrying my firearm legally. And I've decided that, I'm going to be a good guy with a gun, protecting myself, my loved ones. I get into a self-defense situation where I have no choice but to use lethal force. So I eliminate the threat as needed, whatever that would entail. And I'm perfectly good. It's a good shoot. Nothing, no issues. But I go to court to, prove my case and everything, and I get thrown in jail because even though I did everything legally and it was a good shoot, I supposedly premeditated it because I had hand-loaded ammunition. Yeah, I don't get that one either. That doesn't really make any sense to me. But that's basically the logic of that, intent to cause harm. And see, intent to cause harm, and I again, number two kind of touches on that a little bit, but intent to cause harm doesn't really make sense either, because when you say intent to cause harm, if I'm in a self-defense situation and I'm pointing a deadly weapon at someone, I don't think I'm trying to get them to donate to the Red Cross. Like, I'm pretty sure that if I've reached the point in that altercation where I have to, if I have to draw my deadly weapon and pointed at another individual, another human being, I most certainly, when I get to court, am going to have to prove that I in fact definitely intended harm on that individual because they intended harm on me and I had no choice but to use opposing force to stop that person. So intent to cause harm, that's kind of why they call them deadly weapons. Okay, so now for number two. Number two is you loaded it to be more deadly. I actually like this one. This is one of my favorites, and I see this more than I even see number one. Basically, I guess the concept is you've decided to hand load your carry ammunition because you want extra deadly. You want it to be the maximum amount of powder possible. You want to get the most penetration, do the most damage. You know, you're just trying to make these super hot, insanely crazy, atomic powered, nuclear powered, depleted uranium rounds, and you weren't happy with what you could get on the shelf. You had to push it further. No. Again, I think this is an argument that probably comes from the non-reloader. Uh, like, people don't realize that. Here's my best argument for that. When people say that you load it to be more deadly, if you've gone and ever watched YouTube, for at least, especially for like the gun channels out there, you'll notice that a large segment of the video testing is basically people testing different self-defense rounds to see which is the most powerful, best at expanding, best at penetrating round out there to use in self-defense for a given caliber, barrel length, all that. So in other words, you've got an entire large genre of gun people on YouTube making videos trying to find the most deadly round to put in their gun. And it's funny because everybody cringes when you say deadly, but whenever someone says effective, everybody's like, yes, I want the most effective round in my carry gun. I want the most effective gun round that's going to stop the threat as quickly as possible. What I haven't ever seen is I haven't really ever seen someone testing the least effective. I don't see people testing and saying, in the comments section, well, I want you to test the round that's the least effective, that penetrates the least, that doesn't expand well, and that is just going to tickle them. Yeah. Again, deadly, most deadly, I mean, again, you're pointing a deadly weapon at someone. Number 3 is yet another one that I think comes from non-reloaders, and that is opens you up to reliability issues. And I think the logic of that is that people, again, I think it's non-reloaders that imagine they've been to a few flea markets or somewhere, and they see some old guy selling some 38s that are all dirty, haven't been cleaned, and half of them are duds because it's some old guy that put the least amount of powder in a round, and they went poof. And yeah, people I don't think realize that, especially once you get into reloading, and I'm going to touch on my 3 tips for hand loading in a second. But once you get into it, and you can actually make rounds that are more accurate and more reliable than factory stuff. For instance, this stuff that I reloaded, right? I did quite a lot of testing. I did velocity testing, I did ballistic testing on that stuff, and I know exactly how fast they're going to go. I know what's in each case. I know everything about that case, and know that is going to be completely reliable in my gun and function correctly and do what I needed to do in case I need it. So the reliability thing, I really don't. Again, I think that's something from people that don't really hand load. And I think there is a difference. Again, I'm going to talk about there's a difference between hand load and reload. And I just think that they don't understand the concept that there is no. One of the things I've seen is people, when they talk about self-defense ammunition, they talk about, oh, well, it's low flash powder, and it's this and it's that, and it's this really good primer. Again, once you get into reloading, you realize there is no fancy powder. There is no fancy special self-defense primer. There is no fancy super casing. The silver casings are nothing more than nickel plated, and you can buy them at will from multiple suppliers. The bullets used, we can all buy those bullets just as easily, online. Save quite a bit of money, I might add. The powder, there's just no fancy stuff that goes into these. These things are loaded. I talked about the one subject that I know got brought up recently in the one group I'm in. They talked about, well, which would you rather, stuff you're making in your garage or a bullet that is produced by a factory that is constantly watched? Now, they may be watched, but I'm here to tell you, I've gotten plenty of duds. I've seen some hilariously funny stuff, upside down primers, all that sort of stuff, get through in ammunition made by the factory. So, like, It can happen, and don't act like factory loaded ammunition is the holy grail and is held to this super high tolerance, because I mean, obviously it's held to a certain tolerance, but I'm pretty sure someone individually loading every single round one by one and checking every single round, which I did, um, is going to be more reliable. Alright, so I'm going to mention this in case I haven't already done it. The number one thing that matters when it comes to using your firearm in self-defense shooting and then living to tell the tale and being free to tell the tale is, was it a justifiable shoot? That's it. That is number one, and number two and three and four and five are way, 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 way down there on the list of does it matter. Was it a justifiable shoot? Were you justified in using your firearm in self-defense? Were you able to say, yes, my life or the life of my loved one was threatened and I defended myself? Because that's what it's called. It's called self-defense. And self-defense, you are the victim. You are the victim in a self-defense shooting. That's the point. And unless you believe that they do victim blaming when you go to court, you're fine. That's the number one important thing to remember. It doesn't matter what you're wearing, doesn't matter what gun you're carrying, doesn't matter if you have a high point or a $5,000 1911. It doesn't matter. It's all about, was it a justified shoot, and did you justifiably defend yourself? That's it. That's the biggest thing that matters. And if you don't believe me, do a Google search, go on the internet and look up and find out all the different self-defense cases where the number one thing that was discussed and that was something to figure out was it justifiable? The convenience store shooting, I believe in Florida, nobody was talking about, oh, well, you know, I believe he had a Glock. Nobody was talking about that. I mean, the gun community talked about that because that's what we do, but nobody in court was like, oh, well, he had a Glock. If he had had a 1911, he would have been fine. Everybody was sitting there trying to figure out, was he justified in what he did? That's what matters. Alright, so finally my tips. Again, another disclaimer, I'm not a lawyer, I'm just a guy on the internet with an air conditioner in the background talking about this. So here's my advice. 3 tips. First off, use all new components. If you're going to hand load, and I think there is a difference between hand load and reload. Reload, you use used cased and you reload. I say if you're going to hand load, use all new components. This is my stuff that I loaded up, right? And I don't know how well you can see, but where it says it right there, and you probably can't read it, it says times loaded, all new. Everything about it. It was fresh powder, fresh primers that I just bought, brand new casing, and I picked a quality bullet. So I would recommend, if you're going to hand load your ammunition, do the same thing. Use fresh components and pick a quality projectile that you know is going to work effectively in your gun and with the velocities you're achieving with your gun. So that's number one. Number two is make sure that you can reload reliably. I know a lot of people, when you first start out hand loading, you might get a few duds. It happens. You're still trying to figure things out, figure out what works, what doesn't work. The internet's a great place for that kind of advice, but make sure that you can load a few hundred rounds and not have any duds. If you're someone that's just starting out, or maybe you've been doing it for a while, but you know, if you load up 100 rounds, you might get a couple duds. Probably wouldn't recommend hand loading ammunition. It's going to save your life. You know, we go out and we practice with our handguns, and we generally don't carry that particular gun until we know we're proficient with it. Well, don't carry your ammunition until you're proficient with it. You know, that's just something I would recommend. And thirdly, don't go crazy nuts. Don't go plus P plus weird stuff. Don't just hand load because you want to go absolutely crazy ballistic nuts, and you want the maximum power, because then congratulations, you're the stigma that, you know, some of the people that don't reload, they kind of think we're just out there to create the atomic loading. You know, this 10 millimeter is a perfect example. All I wanted to do was replicate the original normal loading, and you see some people out there that kind of go above and beyond that and go absolutely atomic and damn near blow up their guns, whereas I had a legitimate reason why I wanted to hand load this, where some people, they go nuts. So no atomic loadings, and also don't put anything weird in your bullets. You know, don't recreate that scene from Jaws where he stuck poison in the projectile. Don't do that. That's illegal. But yeah, just stick within Sammy specs. You know, don't go crazy nuts, and you should be fine. Again, I just all these things I listed here, I think I hopefully dispelled them to the best of my ability. Again, put down below what you think. If you agree with me, disagree with me, give me a few more talking points, because I probably will end up doing a part 2, depending upon how much traction this gets. And yeah, so that's my video. Hope you all enjoyed it. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to put them down below, and have a good day.